So welcome everyone. Um, Welcome everyone in the United States, in Israel and Palestine, other places in the world. Welcome to the latest in Partners for Progressive Israel's series of webinars. This webinar is called Assault on the Judiciary, Inside Netanyahu's Plan to Establish and Dominate an Illiberal Israel. Certainly a very topical subject. My name is Ron Skolnick. I organized this series on behalf of Partners for Progressive Israel. Before I hand it over to today's panel, I'll just briefly note, Partners for Progressive Israel is an American not-for-profit dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors. And that, of course, includes an end to Israel's military occupation. Partners supports Israelis working to ensure social justice, civil rights, Jewish-Arab partnership, and equality for all of Israel's inhabitants. The organization wishes to deepen Americans' understanding of Israel's and Palestine's complexities so they can better advocate for a progressive future for all the inhabitants of the region. Partners is glad to be bringing this webinar for free, but if you enjoy it and want more programming like it, please visit progressiveisrael.org, and if you can, make a contribution. I'll just note, and you'll probably hear this again, there's a chat function available and a Q&A function. Any questions that you wish to put to the panelists, please put in the Q&A. The chat is open, but it's not being monitored by anyone. It's just for audience discussion. Okay, now let me introduce our panel briefly. It's really a terrific panel. I'm so delighted that all three of them have agreed. I'll start with Dr. Hassan Jabarin. He is the founder of Adalah, the Legal Center for Arab Minority Rights in Israel. He served as its general and legal director since it was established in 1996. He holds an LLB in law from Tel Aviv University and LLM in international human rights from American University, Washington College of Law, and a PhD in law in Hebrew University. Over the last 25 years, he's litigated before the Israeli Supreme Court scores of landmark constitutional cases regarding Palestinian citizens of Israel, including the Palestinian leadership, as well as international humanitarian law cases concerning Palestinians in the 1967 occupied territory. For the last 25 years, he's been an adjunct lecturer at the law schools of Tel Aviv, Hebrew, and Haifa universities. Hassan has received awards and prizes for outstanding public interest lawyering in the defense of human rights, and he has published academic articles on the citizenship status of the Palestinians in both books and law reviews. Hassan's co-panelist is attorney Talia Sasson. Talia has worked in the Israeli State's Attorney's Office for 25 years, from 1979 to 2004. From 1996, she headed the Special Tasks Division of the Israeli State Attorney's Office, and in that role represented the government of Israel before the Supreme Court in major criminal, civil, and constitutional cases. In 2004, at the request of former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, she prepared as a special legal advisor a report on illegal outposts in the West Bank and law enforcement on Israelis in the West Bank. That report became widely known as the Sasson Report, and it was delivered to the Sharon government in March 2005. She then authored At the Edge of the Precipice, Is the Victory of the Settlements the End of Israeli Democracy? That was published in 2015, but it's just as relevant as ever. The book describes the background and implications of the Sasson Report and analyzes the tensions between Israel's governments and the Supreme Court over occupation and settlements. Sasson is the past president and board chair of the New Israel Fund, and in 2009 ran for Knesset as a representative of the New Movement and Merits Party. Last but not least, certainly, is our moderator today, Emily Schaefer Omerman. She is an Israeli human rights attorney with more than 15 years experience litigating in the Israeli Supreme Court. For over a decade, she worked at the Michael Sfard Law Office. She served as legal director to Yesh Din's Security Forces Accountability and Military Courts projects. She represented the village of Bu'in in challenging the wall and settlements, and brought litigation to prohibit the use of white phosphorus in Gaza on behalf of Yesh Gvul. She also served as legal counsel for many of the organizations you've heard of, Breaking the Silence, Peace Now, and many others. Emily is currently an adjunct professor of human rights at American University and is regularly invited to lecture on the adjudication of Israeli military, constitutional, and administrative law, and the application of international law to Israel's occupation. So it's really an all-star panel. I'll get out of the way. I'll hand things over to Emily. I'll be back at the end to wrap things up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to our wonderful panel.
Thank you so much, Ron, and welcome to everyone in our audience. I'm really so honored that Partners for Progressive Israel invited me to moderate this event. The topic couldn't be closer to my heart, and Talia and Hassan are two of my greatest role models. So I feel very fortunate. And before we hear about them, I want to give just a quick word about the structure of the webinar, and then also a few words of background. So for the first probably 35, 40 minutes, I'll be posing questions to the panelists. And then after that, we're going to be turning it over to you, the audience, to ask questions that Talia and Hassan will answer for you. Just a reminder that the chat is for you to discuss amongst yourselves, and the Q&A function is for you to add your questions. You can do that at any time, and then we'll pick them up during the Q&A session. So I just want to give a few words of background to make sure we're all kind of on the same page when we dive into this pretty complex topic. So you're probably asking yourselves, and we're going to hopefully get into, when Israel's judiciary became an enemy of the people. And actually, the history goes back pretty far. In 1948, when the state of Israel was created, there was a secular judiciary modeled after the British common law system, not that different from the US common law system. The main difference, though, being in sort of the details of the checks and balances, and maybe the weight in those balances on the three systems or three branches of government, since by definition, under Israel's parliamentary system, the executive branch is always the majority in the legislative branch, and there are no local or regional representatives. There's always been tension between the religious and secular parties, and that's one of the main reasons why there's no constitution in Israel. Rather, there is a set of now 14 basic laws with quasi-constitutional status, most of which can be annulled with a simple majority of 61 of the 120 Knesset votes. In the 1990s, the Israeli Supreme Court, under Chief Justice then Aharon Barak, began to play a more prominent and to many controversial role in Israeli society by essentially granting the court the authority to judicially review decisions or laws that were passed by the Knesset, and started ruling in favor of granting or expanding rights for a lot of different minority communities, LGBTQ, gender issues, and greater separation of religion and state. So public trust in the Supreme Court has been kind of always a fraught issue, a lot of times falling along political lines. But in more recent years, particularly under the Justice Ministry, when Ayelet Shaked was heading the ministry from 2015 to 2019, there started to be limitations placed on the authority of the Supreme Court, and then in particular to take West Bank land issues out of the court's hands. And now the current government is proposing even greater reforms, or as I believe Talia and maybe Hassan also called it, a real judicial revolution, which includes just in very brief terms, and I hope that we'll get more into details of this, a veto or override clause allowing the Knesset to override a Supreme Court ruling striking down legislation as unconstitutional, essentially really stripping away that judicial review, banning judicial review of the basic laws, which stand in as the Constitution, stacking the Judicial Appointment Committee with politicians or political figures chosen by the government. Right now, the committee that selects justices has 9 members. 3 of them are justices themselves, 2 are members of the Israeli Bar Association, and the remaining 4 are politicians. So they want to make a majority of the committee of politicians, and then revoking the reasonability basis that is used to nullify or change actions by actors of the state, different agencies, and turning ministerial legal advisors into essentially political appointees. Just one last word about the term government, because it's a little bit confusing when coming from the US perspective. The sort of little g government we could refer to as, all 3 branches of government, but in Israel, the Israeli government with a big G refers really to the ministries and the cabinet. And so that's something to bear in mind in the discussion. So now we're kind of moving into present moment, lots and lots of weekly demonstrations against these reforms, a real chasm in Israeli society. And Talia, you recently published this week a powerful opinion piece in Haaretz newspaper, warning that the democratic bedrock of the country will be completely eroded if the current government restructuring is put into place, government, little g government. This isn't the first time that you've warned about Israel's democracy being at risk, particularly with regard to the settlement movement and expansionism. Your 2005 report, the Sasson report, uncovered illegal settlement construction and corruption at the highest levels of government. And your 2015 book, you described there the victory of the settlement movement and the tension between the Israeli government and judiciary. Is what we're seeing now simply a more extreme version of this trajectory that we've been on for decades? Or is this something new and especially dangerous?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. As to your question, I think both questions, the answer is yes. It's a combination of both of them. A part of them are things that we have seen for many, many years in Israel, and a part of them are maybe in a way new. I could tell you that the trial of Mr. Netanyahu, and that he's being indicted in a very severe charges, brought him to this legislation about the Justices Committee. This is a way how to make impact on the justices of his trial. The need of Netanyahu with having a coalition and a government brought him to the fact that he needs to take care of Dairy. He's the head of Shas party. And since the Supreme Court disqualified Dairy just a few weeks ago, he needs to find another solution. So his solution is that he will legislate a law according to the Supreme Court won't be authorized to supervise any basic law in Israel. And more than this, even about regular law, only a decision of unanimously decision could repeal a law by Supreme Court. And of course, afterwards, the Knesset could give life to this law again by 61 mandates. Another reason for what we see is their will to have an annexation of land from the West Bank. He appointed Smotrich, who has this agenda, and his supporters for this, especially for this, to take care of the lands and all the resources in the West Bank, and to annex that to Israel, even not by declaration, but by practice. So this is why Mr. Smotrich is a minister in the Ministry of Defense, and he's going to take care, and he's doing that already, of those issues that I just mentioned, although today I just heard that the administration of the United States said that every decision of Smotrich about the lands in the West Bank would consider as an annexation to Israel. This is something I just heard in the news. I don't know, didn't get into it, but just mention it. There is another reason, that is since Netanyahu had no other bride to get in to this marriage of coalition, he needed Ben-Gvir, who is a part of the Zionist party with Smotrich. He's a very, very extreme on the right, was convicted with terrorist activity, that guy. And he demanded, and he's going to get by legislation, and a lot of, I don't know, he's going to take over the police, and the police might become a political police. I don't know how to explain that. This is unbelievable, as a matter of fact, in a democratic state, but this is what's going to happen. And another reason is that there is an organization named Kohelet that is working for many, many years secretly in Israel or out of Israel, I don't know, financed by some Americans, Jews, with a lot, enormous money, and they planned the whole thing. So the government could come now with a blitz of legislation. This is what they do. This is something you ever seen such a thing. In days, in hours, they're going to bring those laws to the Knesset and legislate that. This is a revolution. And to my great sorrow, in my opinion, it's unconstitutional. It's against the Declaration of Independence. This is a disaster for everyone who loves the state of Israel.
Thank you, Talia. Hassan, I'd love to turn to you now. Last month, Adala published an analysis of the new government's policies based primarily on the Knesset Coalition Agreement, which you called the roadmap to entrenching Jewish supremacy in Israel. One of the aspects of the roadmap that you identify is restricting the authority of the Supreme Court. Can you talk about why this is such a dangerous new development next to all the other policy and legal changes you name, and how it serves to entrench a regime of Jewish hegemony? Oh, you just need to unmute, Hassan.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, and I am happy to be with Emily, that I know her for years, and Talia, that I also know for years. It's true, we published a paper, about 20 pages, analyzing this government and all the agreements between the political party that constitutes the government, and we analyze it from legal perspective. So our paper is not tackling only the issue of the judiciary. It's wider than that. In fact, the judiciary takes maybe 1 page or 2 pages of this length, because the other aspects are even more dangerous and illegal from international law perspective that this government intend to do. First, this is the Likud is a ruler political party. As a ruler political party, usually it has some flexibility that it goes and follows the coalition that it composed. This time, they composed coalition with 2 sectors. One sector is the Haredim, or the Haredim, Hasidim political parties, and the other is the Zionist political party. Let us start with the Zionist political party. This party has two leaders, Smotrich and Ben Gvir. Smotrich's target is the Palestinians in West Bank and East Jerusalem. This is his main target. This is the target of the leaders of the settlers. Ben Gvir target is the Palestinian citizen of Israel. So this is why we have the coalition agreement between the Likud and this political party focus on those matters, Palestinians, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Palestinian Israel. The Palestinians are interested not in the Palestinian rights, they are interested in the identity of the state, the relationship between religion and state. And this is why we have many, many provisions of the agreements about strengthening the identity of the state, strengthening the identity of the state as a Jewish religious state. So if we read the agreements, we will find that, first of all, the Jewish nation state law is major in those agreements. The government wants to implement the Jewish nation state law. The leading provision articles of this government agreement is to ensure that only Jews will have the right for self-determination in Eretz Israel, not even in Israel, meaning in mandatory Palestine. And only the Jews will have this right and this group right. Another provision that came from the Jewish nation state law, that this government must widen and expanding Jewish settlements in the Green Line, Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and West Bank, meaning to adopt policy of segregation in land and housing. And also the agreement include to continue confiscating the Bedouin land in the Nakab, what we call the unrecognized villages, and to try to control those villages. The police aspect also to have more hand for open fires, to be flexible in open fires against citizens. And as I said, emphasizing the Jewish identity of the state. This is why this government is dangerous for the Palestinians everywhere under this living under Israel government. And all what I mentioned, they are problematic from international law perspective, and also some of them from Israel legal perspective, about expanding the settlements and confiscating private lands of the Palestinians. It's considered one of the war crimes based on international criminal law. So in order to ensure all of this, it comes the issue of the judiciary. You have to limit the power of the judiciary legal system and to make it political legal system in the meaning to follow the politics and not to allow the law control the politics. This is why this provision is important. You cannot have an easy life to implement those illegal articles without putting the law aside. This is why the attack of the court is connected to those matters. Doesn't mean that the courts all the time, and we will reach that, defend the right of the Palestinians. I am not saying that. But for this government, in order to ensure all of those aspects, they must control the power of the Israeli Supreme Court. And this is what they are doing. all of those issues raise a question from international law that all the time the Attorney General of Israel argued that ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel. One of the dominant reasons because Israel has independent legal system. Now this government saying the Israel legal system is not independent, and we are going to control it, and we are going to implement the Jewish nation state law that the world perceive it as racist law. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. Maybe continuing on that line, I'll ask you, Talia, you talk in your Haaretz piece about the need for the government to return to and uphold the Declaration of Independence, as you talk about the critical role of the Israeli Supreme Court as a gatekeeper of those foundational democratic principles. But as we mentioned before, constitutional law in Israel is essentially judge-made law, and the court gave itself the authority to review laws. So do we actually need more than just to stop this attack on the judiciary in order to achieve genuine democracy?
Well, you know, it's like the Everest now to climb. First of all, we need to stop the whole revolution. That would be, you know, what we thought before, that our democracy is not strong enough. There should be done a huge corrections for maintain democracy, ending the occupation, having a peace agreement with Palestinians, having a constitution in Israel, all those things that could maintain Israel's democracy. Now what we are facing, that what we had, it looks like heaven for us. What we're going to face is a horrible world for us, a horrible one. So to your question, yes, we could do a lot more, but first of all, we have to stop it, to stop what we see right now. And our power to do that is not very strong. We're going to demonstrations, many of us. I ever seen such a huge demonstrations in Israel. So many. I'm located in Tel Aviv. I see here hundreds of thousands of people in the street. It's unbelievable. And young people that we didn't see before, and students, and high-techists, and I can't mention how many categories of people that we never saw before in our work to support democracy in Israel. But how to stop the government of this blitz of legislation, nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I assume that you will have some question what might be afterwards. So I'm waiting.
Great. You know, Hassan, you and I have been part of discussions over the years amongst many different lawyers and practitioners in the human rights space about the merits of bringing cases at all to the Israeli Supreme Court on behalf of Palestinians, given the court's deference to the state, to the security establishment, and its role in further entrenching and perpetuating human rights abuses, whether in the occupied territory or the inequality that we see between Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel. You know, back in the first Intifada in the late 80s and early 90s, there were even calls to boycott the Supreme Court entirely. And many Palestinian and Israeli NGOs have taken this position again in recent years. B'Tselem is one of them, Al-Haq is another. What do you think? Is it time for a widespread boycott?
This is a question about the boycott of the court. Today in the world, we can consider it as the Palestinian question. In the past, it was the South African question. And the ANC raised this question because the ANC found that when the Africans won cases before the South African courts, South African regime immediately used this success in their propaganda in the war to address the international community and to say that this country is country rule of law and country and the only democratic state in Africa. And in the end, the ANC didn't decide to boycott because they found that they cannot ask the people to demonstrate and to take risk and to violate the law and not to give them legal aid to support lawyers to defend them. And I spoke with some of the leaders of the ANC 10 years ago, and some of them who argue to boycott the court became justices in the Constitutional Court of Africa, South Africa. And one of them told me that the decision to continue to go to the court was right because they couldn't ask the people to demonstrate and to protest without legal aid. Now, I think today also this question is Palestinian question, and the Palestinian case is much harder than the South African case, because if I want to compare with the successes of the Africans before South Africa courts, they had more success than the Palestinian before Israeli courts. One example for that, when South Africa came to prohibit the family unification rights for the Africans, the court intervened and protect this rights, the family rights. Israeli Supreme Court didn't do that. However, I cannot say that it's easy to come and to say boycott the court. People need legal defense. And if I boycott the court, it doesn't mean that all the lawyers in Palestine, Jews and Palestinians, will follow me and boycott the court. There is the private sector, and there are families that they want to defend their rights and to continue to go to the court. In fact, we didn't see phenomena that people succeeded to boycott judicial system under either apartheid, under colonial regime or settler colonial regime. Even the slaves didn't boycott the courts in USA. So this question to boycott, it's not easy. As you mentioned in the first intifada, it was this shit to boycott the court. Okay, the Palestinian lawyers from West Bank didn't go to the court, but they were replaced by Palestinian lawyers from Israel who start to defend the Palestinian and Israeli Jews lawyers that they start. So it has no effect. The question is, we as human rights lawyer, our role to be critical to the court and not to be voice of the court. And even if we succeed in cases, to come all the time to expand and to speak about the role that the court take on the sides of the oppression of the people. But to boycott, it's always difficult to do that. I think the strategy will be now, since the court has a conservative judge and under attack, and the history of the court, as you said, wasn't even when they had liberal judges, didn't defend the rights of the Palestinians, to try to take more defense cases rather than affirmative right cases. Defend cases, meaning that if they want to deport me, if they want to take my citizenship, if they want to put me in jail, if they want to criminalize me, to defend my rights. Affirmative cases is to ask for constitutional rights. That's problematic because the success is not ensured and maybe those cases will give legitimacy for the government to ensure. So the focus I see that will be in defense right cases and before lower courts as much as we can, and not before the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Hassan. So such an interesting perspective, especially bringing in comparison to the South Africa case, and that nuance also about what types of cases. It's not just yes or no. It's how and when. Talia, we've been speaking a lot about the impact of the assault on Israel's judiciary, or maybe on democracy as a whole, on Palestinians, whether in Gaza, Nazareth, or Nablus. But these measures also threaten to impact Israeli citizens, including Jewish and Palestinian citizens, on a full spectrum of issues, from women's rights to LGBTQ rights to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Can you paint a picture for us of what Israeli society would look like if the current government succeeds with its plans?
First of all, I would like to divide my answer into two. First, about the legislative procedure, because it brings us to dead end, I think. Let's assume that they're bringing on Monday the first steps of the legislation for the first call. There are 3 calls, and afterwards some small corrections. They would bring it to 2nd and 3. They could do that in one day, and the legislation would pass, in my opinion. And then would be an appeal to Supreme Court about the legislation to repeal it. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe Supreme Court might repeal it. And then what will happen? Then I believe that the Knesset might vote in 61 mandates that this legislation is alive again. And then what will happen? So there would be a constitutional crisis when Supreme Court say no and the Knesset say yes. What about the simple citizen? And to whom the authorities of Israel, let's assume the police, to whom they would listen to? What would they do? There would be a committee of justices, a new one, with new justices, that they will promote the new justices and appoint them. What about them? So I don't know the answer. I'm just putting that as a question. I don't know. Now, let's assume that the whole legislation would pass. How Israel would look like if, people would obey it. So they want to limit the right for strikes, for demonstrations. There are some new legislation suggestions in the Knesset already. They want to limit the media. They would take over the Israeli broadcast. They're going to abolish it. I don't know what they think to do instead of it, if at all. I really don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows why they stop it. People believe that they stop it right now because, first of all, they want to pass right now the legislation about the Committee of Justices and about dairy. These are the most important thing for Bibi Netanyahu. So he don't want any distractions and anything, any obstacle in his way. He wants, first of all, in a blitz to approve them. And afterwards, for instance, what about women? There are suggestions in Israel of 2023, that there would be a law that women could sit only in the back of the bus because they're women. They're not men and they're not equal. Just for, and some separation, it starts in university, but they might want to have it since the kindergarten between boys and girls. What will be about LGBT? I don't know. What would be about the Arab parties? They might disqualify Arab parties of running to Knesset. Maybe many people, a huge number of people in Israel, citizens of Israel, won't be represented in the Knesset. The police, how the police would treat citizens. I assure you that in demonstration of the left, we've seen that in the past, they will be in a very tough hands. They will treat citizens of Israel. Now, under Ben-Gvir, I can't imagine. I don't know, with new authorities. There would be a huge harm in economics. We see that already. So things in Israel is not looking very well.
In the interest of moving us toward questions from the audience, I'm going to ask one last question that kind of combines the questions I was planning on asking you, but I see is also reflected in some of the questions coming up in the Q&A, and I'll ask it of both of you. So, you know, one of the things that that is coming up in the demonstrations, and something that also came up back in the 2011 social justice protests, is a small but visible voice saying no democracy with occupation. Back then it was no social justice as long as there's occupation. Now, you know, there's no democracy as long as there's occupation. And you know, it seems like these voices are, like I said, not the majority. But they do exist. And the question really is there any potential for those voices to really take hold within Israeli society? And kind of separately, but relatedly, when we are looking at a government that is, you know, led by the same people that Talia was, you know, highlighting and researching in the 2005 report, the settler leaders, settlement movement leaders, and expansionists. When the government is led by these people, and we're seeing the plans behind what they're doing, can we really talk about democracy within the Green Line, or is there a different conversation that we need to be having in terms of where we're going, what the future looks like?
One of the reasons that the Palestinian citizen of Israel they don't join the protest in Tel Aviv mainly is because this is a question that you raised. Me and Talia in disagreement. Talia perceives that the Green Line is a democratic, and I am not perceiving the Green Line as a democrat. And I am not seeing that just now because of this attacks against the judiciary, Israel will stop to be democratic. I perceive that Israel non-democratic regardless to this judicial attack on the judiciary. And regardless even to the question of the occupation, although there is a dynamic between the Green Line and beyond the Green Line. And the occupation, of course, the continuation of the occupation influence the laws in Israel. However, we can speak about the Green Lines a little bit separately than the occupation. We can see that until 1966, the Palestinians were under military regime, exactly as the West Bank until now. after the occupation of the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem and Golan Heights, this regime was transferred to that area. But doesn't mean that the Green Line became a democracy. After that, Israel is the only state in the world that has 2 tracks of citizenship, which based on ethnic belonging. Jews has right of citizenship different than the Palestinian citizens. Palestinian citizens don't have the law of return, of course, allow every Jewish person to come to Israel, even when he has no connection to Israel. Palestinians don't have the right to come to their home if they are refugees. And Palestinian citizen cannot have family unification. Even this, I cannot marry a person from West Bank and to live together in Israel. And this is a major thing. And in land issues, 76 of the Palestinian land were confiscated. And if we want to speak about the Israeli Supreme Court, in the last 20 years, many racist laws passed against the Palestinians, and the Supreme Court didn't defend the Palestinian citizen from one law. It confirms all those racist laws. Even when half of the Knesset perceive those laws as racist, the Supreme Court confirmed it. Confirm it twice the ban of family unification. Confirm the laws, the racist law or segregation laws that allow every small Israeli settlements within the Green Line to decide who will be allowed to live in those settlements, which called in Hebrew Va'adot Kabbalah. And it confirmed law that allow the majority of the Knesset to expel and to stop the membership of Arab members of the Knesset, which called the expulsion law or Hukadaha, and the boycott law, and the Nakba law that prohibit the Palestinian to commemorate the Nakba, like Palestinian institutions that are linked to the state. So the Supreme Court wasn't democratic with the Palestinian, and this is why the Palestinians don't join the protest. It's not just only because the protest under Israeli flags. It's because the 2 different perspectives. However, doesn't mean that the Palestinians won't be the first to pay the price of this attack against the judiciary. At least they won't have a place to exercise their right to be heard, to bring cases. Of course, they will be a victim of that. But here we have different perspective, and this is why I am for a state for all of its citizens, not the state that define itself as state for the Jews and only for the Jews. I'm not against the right of Jews, but I'm asking what about the right of the Palestinians, and why the Palestinian citizen cannot be to live in their homeland with full equality. I always, and I say that before the court, I cannot accept that there is one Jewish person has right more than any Palestinian on the Green Line. But lately I start to believe that also no Palestinian has more right than any Israeli Jewish person. So equal rights against the laws and the regime of the Green Line. The Green Line is negating the political rights of the Palestinians. This is why I don't see it as a democracy, but of course, what next if the Green Line is not democratic and there is no, we don't see the end of the occupation, and we don't see that the project of 2-state solution is working. So what to do? And many representatives of the EU states all the time when they meet us, they ask this question, what to do? We are saying that to support the human rights in Palestine or in Israel, Palestine, in mandatory Palestine, everywhere ad hoc, without the question of the statehood. If there are rights of Khan al-Ahmar to defend and to stand for their rights, and rights of Bedouin in the southern Nakab to stand for their rights, and to defend the rights of people regardless of their geography. The question of statehood, I think it's not the major question now. The major question is question of human rights for all, not to divide the country one state or two states or three states. So this is what we need, support for human rights for all, in everywhere without divisions and without lines of geography.
I still think Tel Aviv would like to be its own state, but Talia, maybe I'm dying to hear your perspective and response on this, but maybe in the interest of time, I can pull from some of the questions that we're getting from the audience. Is that all right with you?
Yes, but I have a small comment. I
Great.
can't sit quietly when I hear Hassan, and he said we have differences of opinions, and he knew what he's talking about. We know each other for many years, and we know our disagreements. So I just wanted to say about the state of Israel. Israel was established as the homeland of the Jewish people and a democracy. Those two principles are the main principles of the Declaration of Independence, which is the document that stands above the constitution, the future constitution that would be in Israel once. To say that Israel in the Green Line is totally not a democracy, I can't accept that at all. Because there is no, in the world, a perfect democracy. I would dare to say cautiously that even the United States is not a perfect democracy. There are some problems that I heard about. Okay, then today I sat with a British Parliament woman, and she explained to me why the democracy in Britain might be fragile. Okay, so everyone has his own problems. Israel has a lot of problems, but Israel tried to become a democracy, and there is an internal debate about that in Israel all the years, about how to turn to be a better democracy. And I agree that we're not perfect, and we have huge things to correct, and some of the things Hassan said I could agree, and some I don't. But to say that we are totally not a democracy, I can't accept that. Totally, I can't accept that. Okay, now, to your questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Talia. One of the questions that's come up from the audience that I think is quite interesting and on point is a question of just how representative this move is of the actual Israeli populace. Meaning, you know, does Smotrich, does Ben-Gvir, do they actually represent you know, the majority or a very large portion of Israeli society?
Far away of that. They do not. What they have, look, what they have is 7 mandates for Smotrich and 7 mandates for Ben-Gvir. But I want to say something about the mandates of the last elections in Israel. About approximately 10 mandates were left alone out of Knesset because they couldn't enter because of some procedures. But they're not there. Meretz party is not there. The Hadash party is not there. And there are others who voted. Now, 10 mandates, most of them, the majority of them, weren't voting for Netanyahu. And he has only 4 mandates. 4 mandates, above 60. So, and there were, you know, more than 2 million people who didn't come to vote. And they could vote, and they didn't come to vote. This was the 5th election in Israel, one after another. People are tired. We're tired here from elections. We had to ask them to really to convince them to go to vote, whatever they wanted to vote. We didn't tell them what to vote, but go to vote. So when they are speaking on behalf of the majority of the Israelis, this is not true. This is something to bear in mind. Although in the Knesset, they are the majority, a part of the majority by coalition. They don't represent the majority of the people of Israel. Not the majority of people of Israel would vote to the Zionist party, whatever. They use this name Zionist for wrongdoings, or Ben Gvir.
Right. I remember in this last election that if you counted the actual votes among those who did vote, right, which isn't the entire population. I think it's something like 50% of the population. But even amongst the voters, the majority voted for center to left parties. But because of the way the system works, not all of their parties pass the threshold, and of course the coalition system means that there's more power even to minority parties.
And there are polls of today that they publish in Channel 12, for instance, that I've seen, that a part of those who voted for the right, for Bibi Netanyahu, are not supporting this revolution. They're afraid of it. They see right now some of the results about economics, for instance. They don't support it at all. This is going to serve Bibi Netanyahu personally for his own things, and to give a chair of a minister to Mr. Deri because they need him in the coalition. This one who was convicted 3 times of some kind of theft.
Yeah, theft, fraud.
Fraud, theft, whatever, bribe, whatever, corruption.
Hassan, I think a lot of people in the audience are wondering what can be done from abroad, from the diaspora, from the United States in particular, to support Palestinian citizens of Israel and Palestinians in the region broadly, to prevent annexation. And maybe you can start us off, and then because we're running short on time, say also, any final kind of comment that you want to add, and then we'll come back to you, Talia, to also say a final comment. All right.
Yeah, I think that the Palestinian case all the time was in the international agenda. The Palestinian people today is the only people, almost the only people in the world that they don't have the right for self-determination, and they don't have the right to exercise their group rights. And the power of Israel regime is that it's supported by the Western countries, by Western Europe, and by US. And those countries, the support of them is not going to all the time to good things, to the education of the people in Israel, to the right or social and economic rights of the people. Those goes also to control, even if they don't intend that this finance support or armed support to Israel or any kind of support, they go, many of that, to control the Palestinians, to maintain the occupation. The Israeli occupation is the longest occupation after the Second World War. And we, the Palestinian citizens, have been more than 70 years live under direct, official, discriminatory regime. I said me and Dalia are different in this perspective. Dalia answered me that there is no perfect democracy. I agree. But the problem with Israel that its racism is official policy. It's part of the laws. This is the problem, that we are living the segregation era of US, not the today era of US. So this is why I see that there is a duty to people who believe in human rights in the Western countries, in US, in West Europe, to raise their voice before their governments, in the campuses of the universities, for the human rights, the Palestinians, and also for Israelis. Like as Talia said, and I agree with her, that some of the rights of the Israeli Jews also are under danger. Like women rights, of course, will be under danger. Gay and lesbian rights will be also under dangerous, because we are speaking about ultra-Orthodox government that going to limit those rights. So I think that there are a lot of things that if I am American or if I am French or living in America, living in France, living in UK, to do. I can do that from my position, always to join statements and to raise your voice, and to join also demonstrations that support the human rights cause in Israel-Palestine. This I can say that. And I feel that somehow it's duty, moral duty, because those states support Israel to continue its controlling the Palestinians. And if I am citizen of those states, I must make my distinction between me and my state.
Thank you, Hassan. Talia, over to you for some closing words.
Yes, I want to say two things, one to Hassan and one to our listeners. To Hassan, I want to say that you're doing a huge mistake by not joining us, the demonstrators, for democracy of Israel. This is your interest exactly as it is mine. You could disagree that Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people. You could think whatever you like. But for democracy, you have to fight and you have to join us. And you're doing wrong for your society. This is one thing that I wanted to say to you and to the listeners. First of all, thank you very much that you have enough interest to listen to our problems. Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people, and I hope that every Jew around the world in any community is feeling with us our sorrow and pain. This is an interest of every person, Jew or not Jew, to support a state to be a democracy. This is against humanity not to be a democracy, a dictatorship. This is not our way. This is not the Jewish way. And I ask you, if you want to do something, is to demand from your leaders not to legitimate Israel with its policy, with its prime minister and government, what they're doing. This is not legitimate what they do. Stop doing that. Stop turning Israel into a dictatorship. We have to remain a democracy. That's it, what I have.
Thank you so much, Talia and Hassan. Thank you to everyone in the audience. I'm going to turn things now over to Ron to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you all. Less closing remarks and more just to thank everyone, Hassan, Talia, Emily. Thank you so much. And I'm really pleased just as a listener to also hear where the disagreements are as well as the agreements. I think it was a wonderful webinar. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Also thanks to my colleague Dinesh Sharma, who's been working diligently behind the scenes to make this discussion happen. Hope you've enjoyed it. For those who missed the opening, I'll mention again, while today's program has been free, generous contributions will enable the organization to deliver these events at no cost. So please visit progressiveisrael.org, check out upcoming programming, and there will be more webinars coming soon. And if you can, make a donation. Thank you, everyone. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and to quote what Haaretz recently published in the New York Times, democracy can die in the daylight too. So if you think it can happen, think again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and being part of the struggle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.